So you know the Netflix hit show Ozark, set in Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, was not filmed in Missouri. It was actually filmed in Georgia because Georgia at the time has and still has a robust film tax credit program, and Missouri did not. Well, joining us on the Screen Lawyer podcast today is Kelley Hiatt from the St. Louis Film Office. And Kelley's going to help us understand how the newly enacted Missouri film tax credit has the chance to bring the next Ozark, filmed here and shot here and set here, all to our state. Welcome, Kelley.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
This is going to be great. Join us. Hi there. Welcome to the Screen Lawyer Podcast. I'm Pete Salsich, the Screen Lawyer. And today I'm joined by Kelley Hiatt, manager of the St. Louis Film Office, who's here to tell us about the newly enacted Missouri Film Tax Credit Program and how it's impacting already film production in our region and how it can really help grow that industry here locally. Kelley, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great. You and I have interacted over the last several months in a variety of Zooms and meetups and things like that, but this is the first time we've really had a chance to dig in to the work that you're doing, and I'm really excited to have you here today to kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Sure.
One of the things that I think is fascinating, so folks who listen to this podcast know that our legal work often is involved with productions. We do production legal, location agreements, talent agreements, film financing, all of that stuff. But we're not typically involved in bringing the film here. Right? That's not really our job. It'd be great to do more of that, but that's where you come in, right?
Yeah. It's really great to be here. I've been working in production for the last 20 plus years as a location manager. So my brain works in a space of, wow, what would it take to actually film there? I look for all of the obstacles that you may run into right. and what would work, what wouldn't work. And so now working at the film office, I'm on the other side of the table where I'm receiving phone calls or I'm doing outreach to production designers and directors and producers right. and people with new screenplays and saying, hey, listen, you know what? I think that could actually work here in St. Louis. And now that we have our tax credit, it actually can, and it will, and it should happen here in St. Louis.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's unpack that a little bit, because you said you've been in the industry for over 20 years, you said, but you're relatively new to St. Louis Correct. In this role. So tell us a little bit, how'd you get there and then back here?
So I went to college at Columbia College in Chicago and did television and production. And right after that, I ended up kind of packing up my bags and heading to New York, because at that time there was no tax incentive in Illinois.
Right.
So everyone was leaving Illinois. So I went to New York and I kind of dabbled out there with some reality TV when it just had kind of started. And then got into network television. For some reason, I always found myself on fire shows. I was on the show Rescue Me. I don't know if you remember that. That was an old Dennis Leary show. And then when I ended up back in Chicago, the Illinois tax incentive had been passed. Okay. And at that time, a studio started coming out of the woodwork called CineSpace. And then came Dick Wolf. And then came Chicago Fire. And I found myself on Chicago Fire.
So if you're good at something, right?
I guess. I always liked fire trucks when I was a little, premonition. So I worked on that. And again, I was doing locations work. And there's a lot involved in that. But a lot of it is really community outreach, dealing with the communities, dealing with the local governments, and really just kind of figuring out a way to bring our productions to life within someone else's space. I always say that we are guests in your community. Right. It was great. It was working on all that kind of stuff, and then ended up in Los Angeles in 2016 with my family, and worked on a little show that you might know called This Is Us. Oh yeah. I went big when I went there. I was going right to the top. And so, yes, of course, why not? And then ended my world out in Los Angeles on another fire show called Station 19. Okay. So I wrapped that up in April of this last year, and at that time we as a family decided it was time to come back to the Midwest. Okay. And so, as luck had it, The bill was on the governor's desk,
Yeah.
and I sat anxiously waiting and calling the powers that be, and they kept telling me, no, we don't know yet.
Right.
And then one day I called and they said, yes, it passed.
Yeah.
So thankfully, a job was open at the St. Louis Film Office, and here I sit.
That's
so it's
awesome.
really great to kind of do what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And like I said, just kind of bring it to the other side of the table.
Well, and I think, well, yes, and I remember we talked about when the tax credit was passed, and then when the governor signed it on the podcast last year, and then leading in towards late in the year, we had our first big film come, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Mm-hmm. But I want to focus on something you said there just a minute ago. You spent a lot of time in the location manager role, where you're trying to place a film in a location, mm-hmm. right? And that's a lot more than just finding that one house that has an interesting 3-car garage, right? It's not a location scout, right, as much as the entire location management role. Or is it both?
Well, it's both. I mean, episodic television moves very fast. It's a little different than a film. So a film, you have a little bit more time to kind of find the places and develop the story. Episodic television typically is a 10-day production schedule. So you would do, let's just say odds and even episodes. So I would be working on all the odd episodes. So while I'm filming my odd episode, the even episode is then prepping for theirs, and then we flip-flop. The show that I worked on in Los Angeles, ironically, took place in Seattle. So everything that we shot in Los Angeles, we couldn't have palm trees.
Interesting.
That put a little twist. But there is an area of Los Angeles called Altadena that looks very similar to Seattle. Big pine trees, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I mean, it's different. And the location manager role really, there's an ebb and flow. There's a part of getting the script in what I call buy or build. So you're basically breaking down a script to see if you're going to buy the location or build it on the stage.
Got it. Okay.
And depending on, the episode, sometimes you spend, 50% inside, 50% outside. Sometimes what we do is called a bottled episode. And that's when the studio wants to save a little money and they keep us inside the whole time, which is a dream for a location manager. Right. There's a little breathe, a little breath. You go from anything from reading the script, trying to figure out what are we going to buy, we're going to build, and then you send scouts out to go find the particular locations, give the powers that be some options. Once they're selected, then I kind of start my process of negotiating and getting to find out, there's a budget always involved.
Absolutely.
And then again, you have to deal with the local government. If we're shutting down a street, we have to deal with the police in the streets.
Right.
Make sure all the neighbors are aware of any kind of inconvenience.
Right.
And also let people know, especially when you're doing something that involves any kind of special effects, that we are filming. It's not real.
This is not really an explosion. People aren't falling out of a building.
Right. Your neighbor's house is not burning down.
Right.
So, there's a big element to it.
And as part of that role also, and now maybe not so much an episodic television, or maybe only at the start of the series, mm-hmm. but in a film, when you're deciding to shoot in a different location, mm-hmm. The part of it is making sure that location can support the production, right?
Yes.
And so what all is involved in that? Because that's a big part of what you're now doing on the other side of things, mm-hmm. for St. Louis, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, and it's something that a lot of people are talking about. I like to operate from if you build it, they will come. I want to get the productions here,
sure.
And I think that St. Louis will provide and will step up and do whatever needs to be done to make it happen.
Right. People
have asked. There's a phrase, depth of crew, and so how many productions can be going on at the same time,
sure.
and how can we really staff all of them? The reality is we're on the lacking side of that. I think maybe we could do one, maybe 1.5, but we'd be hard pressed.
Right.
But that's
just at this snapshot in time.
That's just and I mean, just in On Fire being here, I mean, there was a number of crew that worked on the show that are working in New Orleans just because there's lack of work, but they live here and they want to come back here.
Right.
So, just because today we only have, one crew, so to say, another production comes in town and then everyone starts coming home.
Right.
Which is great.
Right. That's something that, for a long time, I've been involved in the production side of things, primarily with production studios, really for a long time, primarily in the docuseries, reality TV world, but then more recently in the independent film world. And I know there is a really robust production community here, film community here, talented people with lots of experience and genuine talent across all levels. But it is still a finite number. And you're right, there are a lot of people from St. Louis or from the Midwest who relocate to other cities to find work. But if there was enough work here, they might come back very quickly.
Absolutely.
And so that depth of crew that you mentioned is something that we think we can expand.
I think so. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I like I have a similar sort of philosophy. Not so much if you build it, they come, but just say yes. Yeah, we can do that.
We'll figure it out.
And then we'll go back and say, how are we doing it? I don't know.
And then you look back and you're like, woof, how did we do that?
But
we
do because you have the capacity.
Absolutely.
You have the will. And as you said, we're starting with a great foundation. So now you're back here in the St. Louis Film Office, and you're the person that those location managers on other projects are talking to, right? About whether to film here.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but it kind of goes both ways. I'm doing a lot of outreach just from my own personal network. But yes, I mean, for instance, I had a coworker of mine call. He's working on a film that takes place in San Francisco. And it is kind of a bank hoist. And they do not want to shoot it there. And so they're looking elsewhere. And he just called me randomly and said, hey, listen, do you know of any banks that are shut down? We need the old school big walk-in safe and kind of think of the opening scene of Batman. You know, they actually shot it in the post office in Chicago. So something like that. And so for me, it's an amazing challenge. It taps back into my treasure hunt skills. And so although, you know, I don't have time every day to go do those types of things, it is great to be able to go out and find those types of things. My answer to him was, I don't know, but I know it exists somewhere. I don't know where it is, but I know we have it and I will find it, you know. So I've continually been sending him photos of places that I found, and it's progressing. I mean, the director is now involved. And, you know, the next step would be to have them come out to here and check it out. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. I was just thinking to myself, do you like schedule it, you know, Tuesday, 9 a.m., drive around for an hour and then go back?
Well, sometimes I'm driving to work and I just pull off the road.
Sure, I bet.
I mean, I'll see things and I'll be like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. And what is that? And, you know, I found myself in some peculiar situations, but, you know, live to tell.
That's true. To get your phone out, take some footage. Well, that's very exciting. And this is something that I'm a big believer in our group here is in seeing this industry grow. Because one, it's work we love to do. And I'd a whole lot rather doing the legal work, the business building, the investment side of the stuff on projects like these than anything else. So I'm very motivated to it. But it's great to see the rise up, I guess, of an actual office in the sort of St. Louis development community, right? And you're part of Explore St. Louis?
Yes,
is
that is correct. So the film office has always existed. Essentially, when the original tax credit hit its sunset, there was an organization that was the film office, and it eventually dissolved. So there has been a person, Renee Eckenberger, who's head of the convention and the Visitors Bureau. She has been running the film office, and you know, and there's commercials and there's things and all that stuff. But once the tax incentive was passed, they thought it was good opportunity to bring on someone full time. Yeah. So you know, it's been great.
That's great.
And there's energy. There's huge energy in the air. I mean, it really feels like back in the day in Chicago coming out of college, and you could just kind of feel it, but we just didn't quite have it. And it's a very similar energy I'm feeling here, so it's super exciting.
I think that's really cool to hear. And I would sort of say the same thing, but I'm a step removed, right? I'm on the business deal side or when there's ready for contracts. So seeing it where you are is really cool to hear. Well, let's talk about the movie On Fire. Which hasn't been released yet, but was filmed here late last year. That's correct. Tell us a little bit about that movie. What's the story? And then how did it get here? And then how did it go? Because it was pretty cool.
I mean, I will speak to it as much as I possibly can. Sure. The movie started production the second day I got my job. So I was kind of thrown into the fire. I was thrown into the fire. Yes. They're like, oh, by the way, we have a movie starting. Okay. And the Missouri Film Office really was the
Yeah.
champion behind getting all that done. So kudos to them.
Yeah, Andrew and Grace are
yes,
great.
yeah, they were all over it. So On Fire is the story of John O'Leary. He was a local St. Louisan. Unfortunately, when he was a child, I think around the age of 9, they don't play with matches, as we're all told, and unfortunately he did, and there was quite an explosion at his home. He was burned over, I think, 100% of his body. Yeah. The only thing that was not touched was his face, thanks to his sister, who was able to kind of put water and save that area. Anyway, he ended up in the hospital for quite some time, and through some excruciating recovery, was able to walk out of the hospital quite a few months later. It was a true miracle. And he grew up his whole life, just rising above and fighting through. And unfortunately, he lost his hands during the process, but he plays piano and he throws a baseball and became a motivational speaker now. And he really travels all over. He's a powerful, powerful human being. Yeah. And the idea that story was made and was able to be made in St. Louis is truly, truly remarkable.
And On Fire is the name of his book, right?
That is correct.
So this is a biopic about him and his story, and it involves people like Jack Buck, the Cardinals announcer, and he was quite a story as a child, and what he's done since.
Yeah, and he ended up going to SLU, and so that's a big part of the movie as well. And he met his wife there, and so they were amazing throughout the whole process. And we got to film a number of scenes right on the SLU campus, and they opened it up to the production for a number of location shootings. So it was great. It was a community effort, and everyone was behind it.
Well, I remember when that happened, when they showed up, because I was following like you. Is the tax credit going live? When's it going live? When's it going live? And I wasn't involved. We didn't have anything to do. That production was ready to go and was ready to go to film in Canada, right?
That's my understanding is it was all ready to go to Canada, and the tax credit went through, and they just flipped it and said, "Hey, we're heading to St. Louis,"
so
which is great.
They would have set the whole movie in St. Louis. It just would have been filmed in places in Canada that look sort of like St. Louis.
Correct. Yes.
And maybe they might come to take some external shots at Busch Stadium or something. But
to set the scene with some aerials. But no, and looking back and just in talking to people that were really, really involved, they couldn't imagine it being shot anywhere else. No. And just. I can imagine it was a very emotional process for John to go through, to watch his life kind of play out. Yeah. And for him to be home and with his family and surrounded by people that love and care for him and went through it with him had to have been also a really great emotional support for him.
I'm sure that's true. Yeah. And it was really, it was almost the perfect story, the perfect film to be here right when the tax credit program comes live and really to demonstrate almost immediately how powerful an impact a production can have on a larger community. Absolutely. Certainly emotionally, but also economically, right?
100%.
They were awarded the tax credit, and my understanding is the number, I don't know the exact dollar amount of the tax credit, but very significantly in the several $1 million in tax credit, which means they spent more than double that in Missouri, largely in St. Louis, right? In qualifying expenses. That's how the tax credit program works. So for films or television series productions that are filmed or post-production done here, any production or post-production that's done in Missouri is eligible for the tax credits. There are some exceptions, which we won't get into, but generally that's true. And a production could get anywhere from 20 to 42% of the amount of money that they spent in Missouri back in the form of a tax credit. And that tax credit then can be used to help finance the film. It can be sold afterwards to Missouri taxpayers who have a large tax liability who can use it to offset that. And it becomes part of the financing package for a lot of films.
Sure does.
And it's really the reason, or the prime reason, I think, that Atlanta has such a robust film and production community. Chicago, as you mentioned, states that have enacted these tax credit programs and run them well. Right? That's the other thing. You can have a tax credit program and not do it well and doesn't last.
That is correct.
But if it's done well, it's a really powerful economic development tool for our region. And I think it just we couldn't have asked for a better first film.
Oh, absolutely not. No, yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
And then there was another film that came right in after that called Vision. It was a little bit more of an independent film, but it was a movie that was supposed to have started right before the pandemic, and unfortunately was shut down because of the pandemic, and pretty much just put on the shelf and didn't think it was going to happen. But once the credit or the tax incentive went through, they were able to open up the books and they were able to make the movie that they had always wanted to make.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, it's premiering this Saturday. So I'm
Oh,
super
that's fantastic.
excited to see
All
it.
right.
Yeah, they're doing a whole red carpet premiere. It'll be great.
That's awesome.
It'll be great.
Well, so we've got 2 under our belt.
And we've got
so
2 under
far.
our belt. Yes.
And I know other productions and other things have received approval letters too.
Yeah.
Well, this is a really exciting thing, Kelley. Thank you for taking some time with us today. We're just getting started.
We're just getting started.
If people want to learn more about St. Louis Film Office, the tax credit program, any of this stuff, how would they find you or contact you?
You can find me at stlouisfilmoffice.com. You can get more information on the credit through the Missouri Film Office, which was mofilm.org.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And so you can jump in on those and
That's
or
great.
give me a call, do whatever. I love coffee. We go meet people all the
Well,
time.
I can attest that Kelley is absolutely willing to talk to you, to come help out. She's here today at my request on short notice, which I really appreciate.
Oh, it's great.
And
as they say in the business, it's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
That's what we always say. It could be the worst. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. And if not, we'll fix it in post. So on that note, folks, we're going to wind this episode of the podcast up. If you've enjoyed today's content, first, definitely go find Kelley. Find more information about the St. Louis Film Office, the location she told you, and just dig in. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. We want to hear more about what you're doing in this area, if you are. Kelley, I have one more question for you that I always ask every guest. And it's sort of the premise of the Screen Lawyer in sort of its underlying reason for existence. What's on your screen right now?
What's on my
Whatever screen. How do you answer that question? Do you think of your phone? Do you think of your wall? Do you think of what you're watching?
Oh my goodness. Okay, what's on my screen? I'm thinking my phone.
Sure.
And it's my family. Picture of my family.
Oh, that's awesome.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. That's a perfect answer. Perfect answer. And that's the whole point. Because we literally all use our screens for everything.
That's true.
And that's where they are. And that's what, I just think that's really interesting how people do that. Even in the screen business, many times, it's not what they're working on, it's something else like that. So that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
And
I have one more thing I just want to put out there too.
Absolutely.
Is that I appreciate what I call non-obvious locations. So if you know of anything that is super, super cool that maybe not everyone knows about, but could be an amazing location for filming, please, please, please contact me.
All right. There you go, folks. You have homework. Non-obvious locations. Let's find them and send them to Kelley.
Yes.
Well, thanks again, Kelley.
All right. Thank you very
appreciate
much.
If you've enjoyed today's podcast or any of our podcasts, find us and follow us wherever you get your audio podcasts. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, hit that like and subscribe button so you get more content from the Screen Lawyer and you'll see all of our podcast episodes. And you can always find us and everything we're working on at thescreenlawyer.com. Thanks, folks. Talk to you soon.